Welcome back, students. This is our second unit of project management, that is project identification, selection, and planning. In this project management lecture, today we will see what is the project life cycle. A project life cycle that includes the steps that are required for project managers to successfully manage a project from start to finish. There are some of the phases. Now let us see. The process of planning and managing projects follows a logical continuous cycle. Each phase of the project leads to the next phase. In this, let us see different phases of a project life cycle. The first phase of the project life cycle is the identification phase. The identify stage includes a needs assessment process to determine the needs and problems in a community. Means in this particular identification process, we have to find out the different problems related to the community. Next process is the design phase that includes the actual planning and design of a project. Okay, whatever the actually planning in structure we have to make regarding to the project, that is done in the design, which consists of exact planning of project, each and everything regarding to the project, flow graph of the project, what are the steps that we have to follow, what are the steps that we have to do one after the another. Everything we have to do in the design phase, which includes the planning of a project. Next one is the implement stage. It refers to the implementation of a project, whether it is a single year or multi-year implementation period. Means it doesn't matter if project will complete in 1 year or it will complete in number of years. Here in the implementation, exact execution of a project, exactly we have to follow the steps that we have decided in the planning phase. Next step is the evaluation. In the evaluation of phase of a project, it results the project, the results occurs at the end of a project, and it involves the determining whether the project's goals and objectives were achieved. In short, we have to determine, we have to find out if the project is successful or not. Everything that was given as a requirement, is it exactly done in this the implementation or execution phase or not. The evaluation stage then leads to the identification of additional or persisting problems, allowing the cycle to begin again. Means if they are in the process of evaluation, we will examine whole project, whole steps, step by step, and in this case we will find out different problems related to project in different steps, and by picking up that problems, we have to find out the different solutions on that problem, and we have to start again a project life cycle for different purposes. Next is the monitoring. The project monitoring occurs throughout all the stages, which allows for small adjustment in the project's planning, design, and implementation in order to ensure the project success. In this particular monitoring phase, here we have to monitor throughout all the stages of a project, and regarding to the planning, regarding to the design, implementation, execution of a project. This is nothing but a project life cycle. In short, we can say that in these different stages of a project cycle, in the first stage, identification, or we can call it as a initiation phase. In this phase, firstly, you have to identify a business need, problems or opportunities, and brainstorms ways that your team can meet to these needs. They can solve the different problems, or they can seize the opportunities. During this step, we have to figure out an objective for a project that determines whether the project is feasible, and identify the major deliverables of a project. In the project management step, in the initiation phase, we have to undertake a feasibility study, identify the primary problems of the project that will be solved, and whether the project will deliver solution of that problem or not, means it will be successful or not. Next, we have to find out the identifying different scopes of a project. We have to define depth and breadth of the project, identifying the deliverables. In this, we have to define the project or services to be provided for the project, or different resources that to be provided for the project. Next, we have to find out the identifying project stakeholders. We have to figure out whom the project that is affected, and what are their needs that may be because of affecting of the project. Next, we have to decide the developing a business case in that project. We have to use the different criteria to compare the potential cost and benefits for the project, to determine if it moves forward or not. Next, we have to develop a statement of the work. It means that documentation by documentation the project's objectives, scopes and deliverables that we have to put into the documentation, and we have to identify the previously as a working agreement between the project owner and those people who are working on the project. This was one in short about the identification or initiation phase of the project life cycle. The next phase we have seen the design phase. It means the planning phase. In the planning phase, once the project is approved to move forward in the first phase, that is based on the business case, statement of work or project initiation document, we have to move to the planning phase. During the phase of the project management life cycle, we have to break down the larger projects into smaller tasks. We have to build a team and prepare schedule for the completion of different assignments. Means breaking the large project into number of parts, we can have a step by step process, and we can different peoples, we have to build a team, and different peoples of the different team can concentrate on the different parts of the project. We have to create the smaller goals within the larger projects, making sure such achievable within the time frame. Smaller goals that should have a higher potential for the success. The project management steps for planning phase, in that we will see for the planning phase, creating a project plan is the first phase of the project management planning phase, or first step of the planning phase. In this, we have to identify the project timeline, including the phases of the project, the task to be performed and possible constraints. Next, we have to create the workflow diagrams, means visualizing a process using swim lenses to make sure team members clearly understands their role in a project. Mean by the workflow diagrams, the team members will get an idea about the work they have to do in the step by step manner, means what the work they have to do one after the another. By using that workflow diagrams, the people will understand their roles in the project. Next, we can see in the planning phases estimating the budget. For estimating budget and creating a financial plan, we have to use cost estimates to determine how much to spend on a project, okay, for the purpose of getting maximum returns on the investment. This everything is to be done in the planning phase, so that it will be called a successful project after the execution and of the project. Next point we have to consider is gathering the resources. We have to gather different resources, technical resources, social resources regarding to the project in the particular planning phase. Building a functional team from internal and external talent pools, while making sure everyone has the necessary tools for the purpose of completing the project. Next one we have to consider is anticipating the different risk and potential quality roadblocks. Means we have to identify issues that may causes your project to stall, while planning to mitigate those risks and maintain the project's quality and timeline. Okay, this is considering the risk and how to overcome that risk. Next one we can consider in the planning phase is holding a project kickoff meeting. Means bringing your team on board and outlining the project so they can quickly get to the work. That is the project kickoff meeting. This was all about the planning phase, that is second phase of a project life cycle. Next phase we can consider is the implementation phase, or the execution, we can say it in short. Firstly, you have received a business approval. Next to that, we have developed a plan for that particular and build a team in the planning process. Now it's time to get to the work. The execution phase that turns a plan into the action. The project manager's job in the phases of a project management life cycle is to keep work on track. Means organizing team members, managing timelines and making sure the work is done according to the original plan. This is done in the execution phase. The steps for the project management steps of execution phase we will consider. In the execution phase we have to consider different steps. They are as: first we have to create the task and organize the workflows. Means assigning granular aspects of a project to the appropriate team members. We have to make sure that team members are not overworked here. Okay, briefing a team member on task, explain the task to the team members and providing necessary guidelines on how they should be completed, and organizing process related to training if it is necessary. Next we have to consider is that communicating with the team members. Okay, in this particular execution or implementation phase, the communication is a very important aspect related to the project. We have to communicate with the, we means the project team leader or the particular project manager have to communicate with the team member, clients and upper management also for providing updates to project stakeholders. All at levels the communication is an important point. Next we can consider is monitoring the quality of a work while undergoing the processing or execution or implementation of a project. Quality maintenance is a very important thing in a project management. We have to ensure that team members are meeting their time and quality goals for the different tasks. That is very important phase here. Next we can consider managing budgets. Monitor spending and keeping the projects on track is a term of assets and resources. For that, getting different resources at a low rates for managing the budgets for different step, that is also important in this step. Okay, getting this step, if you have properly documented a process that is already in place, executing the project will be very easier, because if planning is done in a good manner, the execution will be a very properly in that particular stage. Depending on the project management methodology you follow, there are many visual tools that you can apply to see which deliverables have been completed to ensure that your project remains on track. Click. Okay, the next step in this particular project life cycle is exactly the evaluation phase, or we can call it as a closure phase of a project. Means whole work of a project is done, exactly everything, implementation, execution is done in the third phase. Next is closure phase, where we will find out all the things are done properly or not. Okay, once your team has completed work on a project, you enter the closure phase. Okay, you will enter in the closure phase. In this closure phase you have to provide a final deliverables, release the project resources and determine the success of a project. Just because the major project's work is over, that doesn't mean the project manager job is done. There are still important things that we have to do, including the evaluating what did and did not work with the project. Okay, now let us see different steps in the particular closure phase. In this closure phase we have to analyze the project. Okay, in the analyzing the project performance, determine whether the project goals were met or not, and initial problems that were solved or not while preparing a checklist. Means we have to prepare a checklist and find out different problems that were arise during the execution of a project and that were solved or not within the time. Next we can see analyze the team performance. Here evaluating how team members are performing, including whether they meet their goals along with timelines and quality of the work or not. Next, documenting the project closure. It makes sure that all the aspects of the projects are completed with no loose ends remaining and providing reports to key stakeholders. Okay, this is the documenting the project closure. While documenting the project closure, we have to find out or we have to see all the aspects regarding to the stakeholders, regarding to the team members, regarding to the different resources that we have collected from different peoples, regarding to the communities they were having different problems. All the documentation process regarding these peoples are very necessary in this particular closure phase. That will be considered as a project report here. Next one is conducting the post implementation reviews. Conduct a final analysis of the project, taking into account the lessons learned for similar project in the future. Next is accounting for the used and unused budgets. All the all the budgets, here we have to allocate remaining resources for the future projects. Means whatever the amount we have used here for different resources, the remaining amount we can consider for the next project. Okay, this is nothing but the evaluation or the closure phase of the project life cycle. Means by remaining on task even though the project's work is completed, you will be prepared to take everything you have learned and implement in your next project. That's why all this documentation is necessary. The next one was the project monitoring phase. This occurs throughout all the stages, allowing for small adjustment in project's planning. Means while executing a project, while doing different tasks, different steps regarding to the project, the monitoring is very important task in that particular phases. At the end of the project, at the closure of the project also, we have to consider different monitorings we have done during the different steps of a project, and we have made different adjustments in the particular projects planning. Everything is under the project monitoring. This is all about the project life cycle in detail. If there are five phases or five steps of a project life cycle, first one is identification or initiation, next one is design or we can call it as a planning, next one is implementing, third one is implementing or execution, where actual work of a project is being started. Next is nothing but a evaluation. In the evaluation, we are checking all the things are done or not, or evaluation is also called as a closure of a project. And next one is monitoring of a project.